you so much. Welcome, fellow internationalists. This has been a terrific opportunity. We've felt the high decibel level out there in the hall. Business cards are flying. We're delighted to have you here. Those of you who work or live in downtown Salt Lake City know that a couple weeks ago we had 120,000 people in this very building for the Comic-Con. Well, guess what? They had a lot of fun. We're going to have a lot of fun, but we're going to make money. Our goal is to show you ways to increase your opportunities and revenue growth abroad. We have three major responsibilities in this panel: to motivate, to educate, and to facilitate international business. And I know there's a whole spectrum of people that have had different kind of experiences here today. Some may have said, man, I had no idea that international was important. And you know, international, the gas prices we pay, the air we breathe, the interest rates we have to, that all is because of international. 95% of the world's customers are outside of America. So if you're saying, gee, I am motivated, I want to do that. There's also the spectrum of folks here that I could love to see them again, old friends who've been doing this for 30 years and they're in 50 countries and they're saying, what can I learn from this today? Well, this panel today will help us do this. As you look at going international, you do not have to do this alone. Help is on the way. You may recall the old Home Depot motto, and when I heard Professor Ram this morning, I was thinking branding, Home Depot. They used to say, you can do it and we can help. Well, we can help, and this panel of four distinguished colleagues of mine are going to make it happen. Let me ask them to come forward if they will. This is the talent pool in the state of Utah to help you go forward in your international dreams and profit seeking. But not only that, as they come forward to take their seats, we could have filled probably dozens of seats with talent in this state to make that happen. I look at our sponsors in this book, OOCL and Wells Fargo, Zions Bank, Mark Garfield, the trade warriors that are out there. This is a talented, deep pool of people who can help you succeed. We talk a lot about connecting. Our job is to connect and prosper together. I will introduce in alphabetical order Mr. David Fiscus, who heads the U.S. Department of Commerce Export Assistance Center here. A real trade warrior, has had experience both here in Washington, D.C., and he is the gatekeeper for a network of 100 embassies around the world and 1,500 commercial officers that will solve your problems all over the planet. Next to him is the charming and talented Derek Miller. He's already been out here as the CEO of the World Trade Center Utah. It is a major upgrade in that position to have Derek serving. Let me vouch for that. Derek has worked on Capitol Hill and is now ensuring that the word goes forth that the World Trade Center network of 300 World Trade Centers in 100 countries are at your disposal to help you get the job done. Sitting next to, why don't you raise your hand? Bryson Patterson from Denver is the Regional Small Business Administration Trade Financing Specialist. This is a connection you definitely want to make if you want to figure out how to export your finances. Probably the first question people come to us with is, how am I going to get paid if I go international? Bryson Patterson is one of the answers to that. He's based in Denver. I thought he was a citizen of Utah because he so graciously comes here so often. On the end is the trade warrior for the state of Utah, Brett Heimberger. Every time I look at Brett, I get tired. He just got off an airplane from China the night before, leading a trade mission there. Brett spent 7 years working in Asia. He spent so much time in airplanes to Asia, he married a flight attendant from United Airlines, the gorgeous Mrs. Heimberger. So talk about exporting Utah. It happens directly there. Fuller biographies of these four distinguished individuals are in our great program, but may I say, they all have graduate degrees in this kind of thing. I would guess on an average, we probably have 15 to 20 years of international experience represented here. May I also say, I have to say this, that when people come to Utah from all over the world and they see how we work together, they say, we have never been in a state where there's such cooperation, communication, and collaboration among your international trade and economic development individuals. Economic Development Corporation of Utah, Chamber of Commerce, Utah Technology Council, you just add it up. We cooperate together well. And that's because we like each other. We're friends. And we're intending to have a conversation here today, a connecting conversation, because I calculate we've literally spent thousands of hours together with the 4 gentlemen seated here over the years. We really do, I know we have connections to offer to you. So with that as an introduction, we'll have a conversation here together. Please join us as we talk through some of these questions that come up all the time. And I should say one of the benefits we have in this state is our international language capabilities. Just as we were backstage, I said, now tell me again which languages you speak. We have Japanese, Spanish, Dutch, French, German, and a smattering of good English here as well. So with that as an introduction, let's just ask our distinguished panelists some general opening questions, and the conversation will evolve from there. Gentlemen, first of all, would you expand on some of the things? Why do we have 4 different agencies doing 4 different things and 4 different panelists today? And maybe, David, we could start here and just go around and talk about what you can do to help us make a heck of a lot of money overseas. David.
Yeah, thanks, Lou. I think that, the fact that we have 4 different organizations up here really underscores the critical importance of going global, right? That we have these resources in place to try to drive home, and the fact that international business is critical to any company's growth plan. And at the Department of Commerce, as you mentioned in your opening remarks, we are the federal government's trade promotion agency. We have offices in over 80 countries worldwide attached to our embassy and consular networks. We have offices in 100 offices around the U.S. to help at the ground level, help your companies develop international business plans, open doors to many of the other resources here, and help you ask the right questions related to taking your company global. And then when it comes to finding partners in the channel overseas, we can help make that connection in the spirit of this notion that the most important distance in trade is that last 3 feet as you're looking your partner in the eye and you're showing up to show that you're interested, you're engaged, and you're in it for the long haul.
Thank you. Mr. Miller.
Lou, it's great to be with you, and I am certainly honored to be with such a distinguished panel. I appreciate what you said about having about 20 years of international business experience, and I think with you joining us, we've doubled that. So we're glad to have you moderating this panel.
I'm just lucky to still be alive, but it's international. I'm only 23 years old, but all that jet lag does take its toll, but it's worth it. It's worth it. It's profitable.
I mentioned this morning the 3 key areas where the World Trade Center Utah works in our educate and motivate, build capacity, and provide networking opportunities. But specific to the question of how do we all work together, it really is one of the things that Utah and Utahns do very well. And so let me give an example of that. You mentioned that Brett came back recently, very recently, within the last 24 hours from a trade mission to China. And so using trade missions as an example, when we have a trade mission that's led by the Governor's Office of Economic Development, all of us here on this stage today provide support to those kinds of trade missions. At the World Trade Center Utah, we're able to help recruit the companies with which we work, where we're providing that business-to-business consulting, and where it makes sense for them to go to places like China or Brazil, where we're going with the governor next month, or to Turkey and the Middle East, where I know, Lou, you and I are going on a trade mission and taking a group of Mountain Lands trade mission that's being sponsored by Zions Bank. And then when they get overseas, the U.S. Commercial Service is able to step in to provide their Gold Key service, which I'm sure we'll hear more about from David in a moment. But again, just to illustrate how we all work together, when you see an event like this or you see a trade mission, it is illustrative of how the partnership works.
Excellent, I appreciate that. And then the money man is right here.
The money man, and just to go off of what Derek was saying, I mean, you, as an exporter, you need to think about putting that team together, and the World Trade Center is a great place to network and meet your export team. You need people who understand international finance, logistics, international markets, and some of the speakers we've had today are illustrative of those expertise that you need to engage with. SBA can help you do that. SBA's there for the long haul, like the Department of Commerce. We help businesses get started, to hiring their first employees, to recovering from disasters. We've got great resources here in Salt Lake with our resource partners, including the Small Business Development Center at Salt Lake City Community College and the SCORE volunteers. On the international side, SBA helps with that too. We help, my specialty is export finance, and as Derek was saying, when companies are getting ready to go on trade missions, when they're utilizing state resources and the Department of Commerce, one of the things that always does come up is how do I make sure I get paid, and that's where SBA can help with that too.
And may I ask, you also work with the Export-Import Bank.
Of course, our sister agency, the Export-Import Bank. Thanks for reminding me, Lou. That we've got a great partner in Phil Duncan, who covers Salt Lake City and Utah, and we work very closely together. Export-Import Bank provides credit insurance to small businesses, as well as funding projects overseas, including the export of everything from Boeing jets to, I work with a company that does pastels and exports pastels to painters in France, nonetheless. So,
Excellent. Appreciate those updates. Brett.
Thanks, Lou. It's great to be here today. I was just thinking earlier when we talked a little bit about the collaboration. There are companies and governments that come to the state all the time, and one of the questions that I often get is, how is Utah able to compete so well with some of your larger neighbors? And I think the answer to that is that we may be smaller, we're not a large ship, we're more of a rowboat in many respects, but as long as we're all rowing in the right direction, we can effectively compete with our neighbors. And I think our organizations, working together on trade missions and other events like the Utah Global Forum, it really helps us to do as well as we've done. At the Governor's Office of Economic Development, International Trade and Diplomacy Office, and I'm the current director in that office, we focus on three major objectives. The first one is foreign direct investment. So bringing foreign direct investment into the state from foreign companies and wealthy investors, investment groups, and so on. The second objective is to help in our export promotion, helping our companies to expand internationally. And we work very closely, as Derek just said, with all of our partners to do that. And last but not least is our diplomacy aspect. And that's important because we have, I don't know how many ambassadors we have that come through the state every year, but it's significant. They're very influential, and we often are able to use those contacts and relationships that we build to help Utah companies succeed in those markets. So we all stay very, very busy, and we all work together, and I think that's probably the most important objective of all.
I appreciate that, Brett. I would say not just a rowboat. Sometimes we're a powerboat, a speedboat, Caterpillar mountain mover, and some of our work we do together. And the beauty, I think, of many of these things is that you can go to the GoEd World Trade Center building, one-stop shopping, which is the 60 East South Main, the big, beautiful copper building. Parking is validated. The food court's right below. If your lawyer's nearby, the accountant's nearby, it is a one-stop shop to solve some of these problems. David Fiskus's office is at the Salt Lake City Community College, the Miller campus at about 93rd South. So those in the southern part of the valley can stop by and get that same service at David's place. But we are really a cooperative, collaborative organization. And you're not going to go in there and think that your trade secrets are going to be spilled to all of your friends. In fact, I still remember a lot of conversations of people coming in various industries and saying, hey, we're doing gangbusters in X country, you name the country, but tell everybody else it's horrible because we want to be there all by ourselves. And we respect confidences, and as I say, this is a full range of services. There is no charge for most of these services. What services do you charge for, David, and overseas that might be helpful for people? Give an example of some kind of services that we taxpayers can take advantage of.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to touch on a couple, all the advice and counsel that we provide is pre-funded, let's say, by your taxpayer dollars. So just stay current on your taxes, and all is good. When you pivot into some kind of a customized program, for example, Derek mentioned this Gold Key service, where we take time, several weeks or months, to work with you to develop your objectives in the market in terms of what you would be looking for in a partner, and then bring to the table over the course of 1 or 2 days pre-screened, pre-qualified partners who are interested in doing business with you. So it's a market accelerator. That program is fee-based, and for small, medium-sized companies, it's generally about $700 for 1 day of meetings. And this is a customized business trip. So you're going to pay more in transportation and lodging than you will for the meat of the program. And one other program I do want to mention, because it touches on a best practice, which is Know Thy Customer, or Know Thy Partner. We have a due diligence report called the International Company Profile. So if you're about to engage in a relationship with a partner where the opportunity costs are quite high, right? You might be locked up in a market for a year. So you want to make sure that your revenue meets expectations and it's going to be a good venture. We can put together a credit check and a background check to further scrub the bona fides of your partner, which hopefully will help you make a decision that will benefit your company. And that fee is about $600. So it's not
like
much
a
in
Dun
the
&
big
Bradstreet kind of report.
Yeah, Dun & Bradstreet report, including actually one of our specialists going out and meeting with your partner, some trade references, and gathering data points that will help you be more comfortable with your decision.
Well, how about if you want an agent or distributor over there? Was that a service that you can provide as well?
Yeah, so the Gold Key is great for that. Now, if for whatever reason you're not ready to take a business trip, or the timing, being locked into a dedicated time on the calendar doesn't work for your approach, we do have what's called the International Partner Search, where we can go out and bring a qualified list of half a dozen or so agents and distributors who meet your criteria. We've made that warm introduction so they know who you are, know what your capabilities are, and then it's incumbent upon you as a company to follow up with them in a timely fashion. So 2 takeaways. First is to show up, and the second is to follow up. In international business, it's paramount, and it will ensure your success. So
I appreciate that. David is assisted by Shelby Peterson, wonderful commercial officer here in his office, but he's backed up by 1,400 commercial officers all over the planet. So this is a wonderful network, and many times if you have a commercial trade dispute, for example, if you go in there from Utah and say, hey, I'm unhappy, the person in Bangladesh is going to say, very nice, you're a long ways away. But if you work with the U.S. Embassy relationships that David can help on a trade dispute, having the full force and power of the U.S. government behind it can be a powerful endorsement as well.
yeah, absolutely.
Brett, what about our trade representatives here in the state of Utah that are providing services? And many of you, I hope, can get to meet some of them today.
Sure, great. Thanks, Lou. So when we reorganized our office and strategy, we came up with 4 areas and countries that would provide the greatest opportunities for foreign direct investment into Utah, and that provided critical markets for Utah companies overseas. We went through a long process to find the very best trade representatives we could find, and we changed the program dramatically. So after many, many months of interviews, we ended up hiring some extremely capable, talented people. So we have a trade representative in the European Union, actually a couple that work in the European Union. We have one in Mexico, one in China, and one in Israel. And they're all here today. I hope that you get a chance to meet them. They're walking around. A few of them will be presenting a little bit later, but I hope you get a chance to exchange business cards with them and meet them, because they bring a wealth of knowledge about market conditions and what companies have done right and what companies have done wrong, but they also have deep networks, and they can help you whether you're in the initial stages of wanting to enter those countries, understand what it is that you don't know, or to help problem solve when you have challenges in those markets.
Excellent. How do they access those trade representatives most effectively? Through your office, Brett? Is that probably the easiest way?
So we have a terrific team at the Governor's Office of Economic Development. You can direct any inquiries through our office, and we'll make that connection for you with each trade representative, and they can help you from there.
Speaking of trade missions and making connections, Derek, how helpful has it been to have actually our governor present in Israel, the United Kingdom, China, now Brazil, to open doors for businesses that go on these trade missions?
You know, one of the things that you learn quickly getting involved in international business is when you are desirous of doing business in other countries, you often have to go through the front door of their government to start that business. And so having our governor, Governor Herbert, participate in the trade missions has been so successful and helpful to Utah businesses to go and make those connections, government to government, elected official to elected official, leader to leader, that then opens those doors to the Utah businesses. And I can tell you just on a personal level, in my former capacity as the governor's chief of staff, that in planning the trade missions, the governor always had one question. And really, the question was indicative of his singular goal, and that is, what can we do on this trade mission to help Utah businesses? So it was of interest to him to go and to meet these officials, but only insofar as it was beneficial to all of you here today.
That is so right. And I know the governor, having had the pleasure of going on several of these with Derek and the governor and Brett, no interest in the tourism things. What can we do to help Utah business? And as you know, many of you have seen this Business in Utah magazine. Really a nice thing to take. I use this all the time in my commercial real estate business now because Michael Sullivan and his staff has done a superb job with the Utah business folks to ensure that we have trade statistics in there, information about our amazing state of Utah. I mean, we are the crossroads not only of the West but of the world. I may just say when we went to China, the governor said, I don't want to take just a traditional, maybe what people think of Utah. I want to take something that will resonate in China. And Brett said, well, how about something from the Utah Jazz? And so Greg Miller donated 4 beautiful, all-signed basketballs by the Utah Jazz that were autographed and put them in frames, and we gave them to the mayor of Shanghai and the cabinet officers. The mayor of Shanghai said, you could have given me $1 million, but I'd rather have this. I think probably some folks had given him $1 million. He'd rather have the basketball, right? And we said to Greg Miller when we got home from the Utah Jazz, is there any, before we left, we said, we thank you for this. What can we do? He said, just find me a 7-footer that can really shoot. We didn't do very well on that, but we sure got some great business out of this from a governor who is totally committed to this. Well, people who go on trade missions, there are a lot of small, medium-sized businesses. It gets expensive. Bryson, Brett, maybe you can talk about the STEP program that helps finance some of that for small businesses going overseas.
Sure. Did you want to?
I think it's a great example of how we work together.
Right.
Go ahead.
Sure.
Your
So,
program.
So the STEP program is a grant that is funded by the Small Business Administration and administered through the Governor's Office of Economic Development. And the idea is to help companies offset some of the costs of exploring new markets or entering new markets. And so Dave talked a little bit about what some of those costs are. Obviously, flights and the matchmaking costs that go along with that. But it's a great way for especially smaller to medium-sized companies to hedge their risk in looking. I mean, going international is not easy, and it takes a lot of preparation. We've talked a little bit about that already this morning, and it takes funding. But we do have ways, and this STEP grant is a great way to help offset that. The grant going forward for the next 12 months will help companies participate in trade missions. So Gold Key Services is an area where we have traditionally applied funds for companies to meet with potential partners and agents in those markets. For the coming year, we'll also have grants available for companies to attend trade shows, both as a singular sort of a singular company that has their own booth, as well as a combination of companies that would go with a Utah booth. We also provide opportunities for companies to increase their international business knowledge. So to take an international business class to really understand the steps of going international. And we also have grant funds that would help offset that. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
I just wanted to point out that Utah was one of only 24 states to get awarded that grant, and I think one of only 3 states to get awarded the maximum grant amount. So it speaks very highly of Utah's reputation nationwide.
Well, we appreciate your support on that. Bartley Matthews and Ariel Briggs have done a marvelous job of ensuring that happens. There's some brochures out at the back about this, and it's a great way to dip your toe in the international marketplace and have subsidized by the SBA grants administered by GoEd. Excellent. Yeah, you mentioned trade shows. Some people, can't get on airplanes to go to trade shows. We have trade delegations that come here for the outdoor retailers and other things. Are there things that the U.S. government or the state government is doing to help us on those? David, maybe?
Yeah, let me jump in. Absolutely, Lou. If your company is exhibiting at large trade shows, you've probably seen it firsthand. You might get a smattering of international inquiries. Well, the U.S. government has a branded program in place called the International Buyer Program to kind of harness the stage of these large U.S. trade shows, which conveniently to us, a lot of them happen in Las Vegas. So it's hop in your car and on a tank of gas, you can be there to exhibit and network with the world. But we'll recruit through our offices around the world delegations of foreign buyers, led by one of my colleagues in country to walk the show floor, use the venue for prearranged one-on-one meetings with U.S. exhibitors. So it's another way of heightening your profile as a U.S. exhibitor at a U.S. trade show to cater to an international audience. So I would absolutely say any of you who routinely go to these large shows here in the U.S., check in with our office, talk to Shelby Peterson or myself to see if they're on the list as an international buyer program or if we have any other delegations coming. It's a great tool.
How about common mistakes that people make as they get it to go into international? They decide, maybe I want to try it. What are some of the problems that you see out there and some of the quick remedies that you might have? Brett, for example?
Sure. So that's a really good question, Lou. I see a lot of problems come across my office, but if I had to categorize just a few of them, the first one would be just a flawed strategy, right? So companies are eager to do international business, and sometimes they'll decide they're just going to try to blow it out immediately and go to 10 or 12 different countries at once without realizing how much of that will stretch your resources internally, not the least of which is stretching your management resources. Another challenge is that companies will look at the opportunities at a country like China, which is enormous, right? But if they've never done international business before, China can be a wild and woolly place to cut your teeth. And we typically don't recommend for most companies that you start with an emerging market if you've never done exports before. But there are countries where you can do that relatively easy and really become more proficient in how to do international business. Canada, the UK, Australia for English-speaking countries, and then the rest of Europe and Japan, countries that are a little bit easier to get started in. I would say that another issue is finding the wrong partner. So companies will often go to a trade show or they'll have someone contact them saying, I can represent you in this country. And sometimes they'll jump on that. It's easy. They've already contacted me. They tell me they've got good contacts and good networks. I don't really have to do anything. They'll take care of it for me. That can be really risky. If you don't do your due diligence to figure out the best partner for you, which I would argue is maybe the single most important thing you can do right to be successful in international business, is finding the right partner. It becomes very, very difficult to unwind that partnership later on. And I can tell you a case of a company that got into a market in that way, and then they determined a few years later that instead of having 5% market share, they really should be having 15% market share. But the partner who had a different dream, we often call this same bed, different dreams syndrome, where your partner will have a different dream about what the partnership is going to take you, and really doesn't have the incentive to do what you want them to do. And so the obvious solution was to say, well, let's dissolve this partnership and go on. That's not always so easy in different countries. So being deliberate from the beginning is key.
Excellent counsel. We have lots of other resources there, educational institutions, the World Bank that Elizabeth Gordonova and the World Trade Center work on. Gentlemen, we are out of time, but I want you to look at these. This is Brett, this is Bryson, this is Derek, this is David. We're in this together. We're here to serve. Please talk with them and their colleagues. We wish you well. This is the excitement ahead. This is where the opportunities both for ourselves currently and for our posterity lie. Please join me in thanking this excellent panel, and thank you.